Did you know that you can face criminal charges if you set up your entity incorrectly in healthcare? Hey, I'm healthcare attorney David Holt. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I'm going to talk about how you might actually put yourself in criminal exposure by making the wrong entity choice and setting it up incorrectly at the start. So, fun fact, only certain people, namely licensed professionals in healthcare, can actually own certain entities and do certain things. The reason we do this is so that, big bad business people don't get involved in the professional judgment of medical doctors and nurses and what have you. And so in Minnesota and California, for example, if you were to simply run a surgery center, a medical spa, a dermatology clinic, what have you, and you were just a layperson, or you set up an ownership structure where you were owning a medical clinic, but you weren't actually a medical professional, not only would you be exposed to civil, meaning, fine, shut down, everything you built just being wiped away in an instant, but you could also potentially face criminal exposure for the unlicensed practice of XYZ. Take your unlicensed practice of medicine, unlicensed practice of nursing, what have you. That is because when you are deceiving the public over your qualifications and or running a business like a medical clinic when you're not supposed to, you have given exposure to the attorney general of the local state in order to potentially prosecute you. Again, this is not just slap on the wrist, it is up to and including potentially criminal violations. What do you do to get around that? Well, you actually set up your legal entity correctly. Right? And there are rules for who can own a medical practice and how to set it up correctly all across the United States, including Minnesota and California. And what that means is if you do have the correct medical professionals in place, but then you have an agreement to a different company, and generally we achieve this through what's called a management services agreement, we can mimic ownership without actually owning. It's not ownership, but it looks and feels a lot like what you're trying to do with ownership, which is to just profit and do business and do pretty much everything except the actual surgery or procedure with a medical clinic. Word to the wise, this is beyond entity choice. This is beyond patient intake and consent forms, HIPAA compliance, all of that on top of what you should be doing when you start a new medical business. This is straight up, you made the wrong decision on who could own the business itself. And now, because of that decision, you have exposure not just to throw away the business due to that ownership decision, but also to be prosecuted criminally, which is a really big deal. I don't know how much I can emphasize that unlicensed practice of medicine. Well, technically, what's really interesting is that the medical board, if you did unlicensed practice of medicine, so I, lawyer, or just acting as a layperson, DJ, run out and say, hey, I'm a doctor. And I don't actually say I'm a doctor. I actually file the entity, create a medical clinic and start marketing and doing all that stuff, and maybe not directly trying to deceive the public. I do by running that clinic, owning that clinic, doing everything the incorrect way. What's interesting is the medical board is not actually the one that has jurisdiction over you. It's the attorney general, because you're not a licensed professional. The medical board technically only has jurisdiction over those who practice medicine and are licensed appropriately. It's the attorney general who is supposed to protect the public that would then be in charge of misrepresentation to consumers and up to and including criminal violations. So this is not just like a willy-nilly small tax implication and yeah, it'd be nice to have the good legal foundation. Making the wrong decision could actually expose you to criminal, if not definitely civil exposure. So hope this information was helpful. Please don't make the wrong choice in how you actually set up your entity, who's the owner. There are ways to effectively mimic ownership without doing ownership if you have the right healthcare or business attorney in place. If this was helpful, subscribe, and we'll see you on the other side.